and welcome to WJ Live. We're glad to have you with us today. I'm George Upper, Editor-in-Chief of the Western Journal. I'm joined today on my right by Andrew J. Shasha, a reporter for Western Journal, and Joseph Setian on my left, Deputy Managing Editor. We've got a very special show for you today on WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. Just before we get to it, I want to ask you to do us a favor, which is to, if you are watching us on YouTube, which I hope you are, if not, find us at youtube.com/WJLive. But if you're watching us there already, go ahead and click that subscribe button for us, and then click on the bell to make sure that you're notified of every new episode that we post. There it is right there. Joe, do you want to do your thing? Click on the bell, Joe.
Ding.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Don't want anybody to miss that.
Yeah.
Solid.
Usually do that at the end.
Solid hint. So today we've got a very special guest with us. We want to get right to that. Joe, why don't you introduce him for us?
Yeah, so today we are joined by Chef Andrew Gruel. He is the founder and CEO of Slapfish Seafood. They have 25 locations worldwide. Pretty great seafood place. Should check them out. Anyway, the other day, Chef Andrew tweeted about a special offer that his company is doing, and we'll throw it up on the screen right now. And I quote, "Starting Monday, we are giving away these community burgers in exchange for a donation. All proceeds will go to help struggling restaurant workers. If you've lost your job, yours will be free without a donation. Oh, and this is 6 calories, and that's my favorite part."
Yeah. I got to say that burger looks pretty amazing for 6 calories. I'm a little worried that somebody at Facebook with too much time on their hands is going to fact check us on the 6 calorie thing, but I don't even care. That just looks too good for me to care.
So we're joined now live by Chef Andrew. Thanks so much for being on the show today. I want to ask you first off, how is this going? How many have you received? Some donations? Have you received a big community response? What's going on?
Yeah, the response has been unbelievable. We have launched the burger element of this promotion in conjunction with a fund that we've started. It's called 86 Restaurant Struggle. And for those of you who've worked in the restaurant industry, 86 is when you're out of something. So 86 Restaurant Struggle, whereby we're trying to raise money in order to help struggling and out of work restaurant workers. So the burger element, of course, a little bit to get to your belly, to excite the cause. And we're going to continue, rolling out these types of culinary incentives, if you will, as part of the grander strategy to really step up as a small business within the restaurant community to help bridge the gap between whatever the government's going to end up doing, if anything at all, and the hardship that we're all facing right now.
Yeah, and what exactly can our listeners and viewers do right now to help out, to help those struggling restaurant workers and business owners and all of that? What specifically should they do?
Well, and I don't want to try and grift only into my own cause. I think one thing we can do within our own local communities, of course, is buy gift cards, shop locally, shop at those small mom and pop restaurants, try and avoid using third-party delivery apps if you can actually go to the store and pick the food up. Those delivery apps really hurt the restaurant because it's, they take 30 cents on every dollar. It's really a transfer of wealth from Main Street up to Silicon Valley. Those are the ways in which we can help within our own community. If you wanted to help out our cause, obviously you could go to my social channels. I'm on Chef Gruel on Twitter, and I'm posting it all over the place, Slapfish on all the social media channels. And we do have a fund up right now whereby we're raising donations as small as 50 cents in order to, once again, put that fund together. We're going to distribute that in denominations of no more than $500 to anybody who can, kind of provide the verification that they're either losing a ton of hours or that they're struggling. It's the holiday season. Most restaurants in states like New York, California have been shut down with no notice and no relief.
That's a great answer, and I appreciate you saying you don't want to grift just for your own cause, because this really is a community thing. This is something that restaurant workers and business owners around the country are struggling with just to make ends meet, to put food on their families' tables. And I want to talk a little bit about kind of the restrictions that have caused those sorts of things. So you've been pretty outspoken about saying, look, people deserve to make their, they deserve to make a livelihood. They deserve to go about their business and earn money, feed their families. Can you talk to me a little bit about what advice you would give small business owners who are faced with a choice? They can either obey the government who's telling them, you have to shut down, you have to do all these restrictions, and that might mean losing a lot of business, losing a lot of money, or they could ignore it, but then they're going to risk breaking the law and getting fined and, in some cases even worse. What would you tell those business owners?
I by no means want to be a catalyst to force people into kind of facing a moral dilemma that puts them in a situation where they could be breaking the law. But what I would suggest is that really weighing the cost-benefit analysis when it comes to skirting regulations within the construct of your own local organizations, because most of these mandates are being put down via various health agencies where they're being deputized in order to perhaps threaten to pull your health permit or your ABC license or what have you. So I think it's important within your own jurisdiction to communicate with some of these agencies to really understand where there's flexibility, right? Number one. And number two, I also think it's really important to now take advantage of the power of social media, because we've seen, like no other time before, messages go viral on behalf of small independent business owners who are speaking out against the hypocrisy that cuts through the science when we can watch our big box corporate campaign donors operate freely and make millions, if not billions of dollars, and we're shut down without even a pat on the back that we're going to get help.
Joe, I kind of want to jump in there if I might. I mean, you got there at kind of these health departments who have been, you're right, deputized to kind of make these decisions, and they're not thinking about the externalities. They're not really thinking about, what's going on with these businesses. And obviously, a bunch of businesses have been hurt. A bunch of different sectors of the economy have been hurt. But I kind of want to speak directly about, just the food industry. It seems like these restrictions really have kind of arbitrarily hurt food almost the most. I mean, when you can go out and you can do your food shopping, but you can't go to a restaurant, or the restaurant has to exist under, X and X restriction to remain open. And at that point, maybe it's not worth paying the electric bill to even keep it open. I mean, can you just speak to how have these restrictions kind of isolated arbitrarily certain sectors?
The restaurant industry has become the scapegoat in this scenario. We are all being targeted because we are independent restaurant owners. And when I say independent, even multiple restaurants, we're still small businesses, right? We're all independently owned outside of kind of the world of large chain restaurants. And those have also been hurt. So I don't want to try and, pick and choose my arguments, because of course, it is somewhat of an even playing field when it comes to restaurants. But the fact of the matter is that we're probably not going to fight back. And most of the people that are making the rules understand that. So they want to take on the appearance of looking strong and looking like they're making the tough decisions. And they're doing it at the expense of these small business owners so that they can continue to pat each other on the back and say, look what I did. I made the really tough decisions. But they know that they will never get within the world of offending their corporate masters who are donating millions and billions of dollars to their campaign, nor will they want to go up against the corporatism that has, lobbyists and, deep pockets when it comes to legal funds. So we're the low-lying fruit. And that's what it comes down to. And that's not conspiracy theory. That's fact. We've heard it from a lot of these leaders. And at the end of the day, the outcome here is going to be a grand switch in the landscape of Main Street across America, because when you wipe out these restaurants, what you're going to be left with is empty real estate that's going to get swooped up by large real estate, investment trusts, or, Chinese firms that are going to take on this real estate, and they're going to turn these into corporate big box stores or manufacturing centers. And we're going to lose the charm, the character of the restaurant world. We're all going to be, it's Demolition Man. We're going to be shopping through Taco Bells and Amazons for the rest of the next decade.
I am so glad you made that reference, because it kept coming to my mind. I don't know how many other people have even seen that movie, but it's such a great reference. We're all eating at Taco Bell next. I'm a guy who loves a good movie reference. So I did want to ease your conscience about one thing, if I can, Chef. And I don't know anything. What I know about the food industry is food, good, hunger, bad. That's pretty much where I live. But I don't think that you need to take any responsibility on your shoulders for instituting any sort of moral dilemma on the part of these small business owners. I think that responsibility lies squarely on the shoulders of people like Governor Cuomo in New York, Governor Newsom in California. Personally, I hesitate to even go into this. But I would. What's so frustrating to me is to see somebody like Governor Newsom promulgate these rules and regulations and then just so flagrantly violate them himself. It would be one thing if he were just a true believer and he really felt like we really need to do these things to keep everybody safe, and he was just rigid about enforcing that even in his own life and his own family. I'd still disagree with him about aspects of that, but at least I'd say, well, here's a guy I can disagree with, but who has integrity, and so we can have a conversation about that. When you just put these rules in place and then do what you want to do anyway, and they apply to the little guy, but not to the people who are making the rules. As somebody said earlier today, all these folks who are putting us out of work are still going to have jobs when all of this is over, and so
Unless we vote them out.
Unless we vote them out, yeah. Unless we vote them out, always with that caveat. So I know as a small business owner, that's just got to be terribly frustrating to you.
Of course it is, and I agree with you. If Newsom was following his own rules and he was locking himself up, his cronies, and the entire state, then that would be one thing. But when we're selective about the industries that can continue to operate within this world of exemptions, which of course has become the buzzword of 2020, and small businesses are the ones that are taking the hit. Look, what's pretty ironic here is the messaging. Here I am promoting small business in America, and I'm putting a bullseye on the back of companies like Amazon and Walmart and Target and these big box stores. Let's back up a year from now. There's no difference between me and AOC, right? And yet I'm getting trashed and completely pummeled by the left right now because they're saying that I'm out there trying to kill Granny and how dare I do this, and shame on me. But when did the script flip? This is nonpartisan. This is about calling out the hypocrisy, protecting small business in America, stopping the economic freefall when it comes to restaurants in America, and making the realization apparent to our overlords that we're not numbers on a spreadsheet. There are people behind these numbers with families, husbands, wives, children, grandparents leading into the holidays. Some people don't even have money to pay rent, let alone buy Christmas gifts for their kids or their loved ones. And, when these questions are posed to Newsom in a press conference and he says, well, it's really about protecting everybody. Well, he sure as hell didn't think it was about protecting anybody when he was dining on a $2,000 head meal with 23 people at the French Laundry the same day that he banned indoor dining, right?
Yeah. The fact that so much of this is happening around the holidays too, I think is so key right now. And my hat is off to you, sir, for doing what you're doing. It is just so good to see Americans just stand up and say, I can't impact 10 million people this year. I can't feed an entire starving nation in Africa, but I can do this thing in my community for these specific people who have been impacted. If we would all do that, if every American would just stand up and do what you are doing, we'd just be in such a much better place. And you know what? We'd be able to kind of turn our backs on the Newsoms and the Cuomos of the world. And who cares? You're irrelevant. We're doing the right thing for our communities, for the people who surround us, and we're going to make their lives just a little bit better. And again, my hat's off to you, sir. I am just admire what you're doing in this.
And as Chef Andrew said, it's very easy for us to support small business owners, right?
Right.
It's not. He has a GoFundMe. You can donate to that if you would like to. It's also simply just as easy as going to shop. Don't use the third-party delivery apps.
Yep.
Go to shop at your local restaurant. Just patronize them and enjoy it because food is delicious, like we all think, we all know. But just support the local businesses in your area because they do appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you're nervous about it, pick it up to go.
Yeah.
Take it home, eat it there. You can do that.
Wear a
be
mask,
be
pick it up,
perfectly
and go home and eat it in your bed
Right.
while watching Netflix.
Well, that might be TMI there, Joe. But yeah, whatever floats your boat, brother.
Anyway,
And
Chef
look,
Andrew, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Really appreciate your valuable insight and your nuance on this issue. So thank you so much.
And thank you again for what
thank
you're
you,
doing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No, it's very much our pleasure. Have a great holiday, and I pray that 2021 will be a better year for you. I kind of feel like it almost has to be, but pray that this turns around for everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks
Take care.
a lot.
All right. So, what a fantastic conversation, and his point, your point, Joe, is absolutely right. I mean, we so often feel, at least I feel this way. I think many people can feel this way, that the issues at hand in 2020 are so big. There's it's
They are.
COVID, it's a pandemic, it's
Yeah.
worldwide, it's an election that spans the entire country, and they are. You're right. Those are big issues, and it's hard for any one person to feel like, I can do something that touches this issue, but that issue is something we can do something about. We can go out and just and who doesn't like to eat? I mean, who doesn't like to eat food cooked by somebody else? Who doesn't like that? It's so easy to make somebody's life a little bit better that way. For those of us who can. Now, we have the luxury of being employed in a essential service, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're not really at a job loss risk
Essential
the way
because
that.
if you make your livlivelihood from it, it's essential.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah.
Essential with air
Right.
quotes. You're right. There are plenty of people who aren't in that position, and those are the kind of folks that Chef's trying to help. So that's when I first saw that story, I was just really encouraged by it, and I'm glad we were able to have him on the show. Somebody I don't plan to have on the show anytime soon. Do you like that transition?
Yeah, you deserve a medal.
Is Joe Biden, who
You're saying if Joe Biden didn't wanted to come on the show, you would say no.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying I don't want him to be on the show. But I think if he volunteered,
I
if
would.
he's willing to put up with the
Yeah.
grief we're going to give him,
That
I'd
would
probably.
be an incredible interview.
I'd probably be okay with
Dibs
that.
on that. I call it. Yeah.
I don't know if it would be. I don't even know if he'd know what you were asking him. But maybe it would.
Well,
be a good
you
interview.
see,
I don't
George,
know. I know.
it comes down to the record players at night, and you got to play
it's
them.
the thing,
and you
the thing.
gotta.
It's the
you
thing.
gotta. And you got to make sure you follow the the thing
Your
that
Bernie
I don't want to talk about.
impersonation is better.
The millionaires
Yeah,
and
there
the
we go.
billionaires.
All right. Okay. So, this week was the anniversary of the Sandy Hook school shooting, which of course was a tragedy, and nobody argues that. But as is their typical behavior, both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris took advantage of that day on the calendar to push for, or at least to make statements about pushing for gun control. Harris, in particular, had a tweet that we'll put up on the screen here for you shortly. But both of them essentially saying, the time is now. It's been too long. We've waited too long. And they do this in the context, maybe we won't put that tweet up for you shortly. I don't know. We'll see. But they do this in the context of gun crime. There we go. Nope, that's not. There we go. That's Andrew's tweet. That's all right. They do this in the context of gun crime and violence increasing in a number of locations. Oddly enough, those locations that are not only Democrat run, but they are
Possible to get a gun.
They're locations where it's very difficult to get a gun because the very things that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to put in place to prevent gun ownership are in place in Chicago, in New York, in Baltimore, in these areas where we're seeing increased gun violence. So, it's the same old gun control grift. It's been the same. It's been going on for 50 years.
Notice that Andrew used grift as well.
He did.
I respect him a lot for it.
We all became even bigger fans at that point. But it's the same thing. They're using tragedy to make a political point. and they'll do it again. If there's a school shooting tomorrow, they'll pull out the exact same playbook that they've always run. But here's my question. Joe Biden, we know, is a Washington animal, right? He is a creature of the Beltway. And so I know what he's going to say if there's a shooting. You know what he's going to say if there's a shooting. It's the same thing they always say. What they say may or may not have much relation to what they do. And so my question, and I'll start with you, Andrew, on this one. What do you expect Joe Biden to actually try to accomplish? Assuming he's our next president, what would we expect him to try to accomplish in a Biden administration in terms of gun control?
I mean, honestly, I think we're going to have to just trust, and the American people are just going to have to trust what he has laid out as his gun control plan. I really do believe that in terms of, I mean, what he's absolutely sold himself to the American left over the course of this election cycle. I mean, to bring the Bernie coalition in, he had to make some inroads. One of those was an absolutely obscene gun control policy that we saw on his website over the summer. I reported on this in October, right before the election, and I got on the line with a couple major PACs and groups for gun owners. And I was told on numerous occasions, I mean, you can find the report on the Western Journal, that this was going to be the most aggressive and dangerous, that's a quote, gun control plan ever put forward by a candidate. He's talking about, enforcing that every gun sold past his tenure would be a smart gun in which, your biometrics, the same biometrics that you use to get into your cell phone, whether it's a fingerprint or, facial recognition, those things are going to be required for you to use your firearm and to be, manufacturing firearms, you're going to need that. To outlaw the purchase and sale of firearms and ammunition online, another assault weapons ban, assault weapons in quotation marks, because that term doesn't actually
I can assault
mean
you
anything.
with any weapon you give me.
Yeah, and so I think it's even scarier that they're going to try to, whether it's successful or not, that's going to depend on these upcoming Senate races in Georgia, whether he's going to have the mandate that he needs legislatively. But the fact that they build this, like you said, on the emotional argument is the most concerning part, because if I actually learned anything in college with my criminal justice degree, I learned very little in that 4 years of study. I learned that,
we're aware.
Yeah,
we're
we know how little you learned. We're very familiar with that. You went to college in Massachusetts?
I did
right?
indeed.
So you probably came out dumber, I would guess.
Almost guaranteed.
And you were dumb to start with.
With the progressive education that I got, if I learned anything, it was that statistically speaking, you're safer in the United States when it comes to violence. Up until this year, with the Democrat-led violence that we saw over the summer, you were the safest you'd ever been in any country in the world in the United States, period, over the last 2 decades. This is one of the safest places to live when it comes to crime, when it comes to violent crime.
And you learned that at a progressive school.
I did indeed.
Wow, if they're admitting that says something.
So how it is that we're going to make the emotional appeal to the average American that we need to take away firearms?
Well, that's the only way you can do it. You can't, if that's the case, you can't do it with numbers. You can't do it with reason.
It's impossible.
You have to make that emotional plea. So making those emotional pleas, Joe, can Biden be successful enough? Andrew alluded to the fact that he had to run to the left. He had to placate the left, right, to get the nomination, to get the win. Can Biden be successful enough in gun control under a Biden administration, a potential Biden administration, to do that, to placate the left?
No.
Can he make them happy?
Thankfully, no, and I think Biden realizes that. He told some activist leaders, I believe it was last week, they were pushing for, lefty type things. He says, look, I could do executive orders on gun control. I could do executive orders on this or that, but it's legislation that will last. And he doesn't, thankfully, because Biden wants to be seen as a uniter, a deal maker, elder statesman, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
He understands that you need to get meaningful, lasting change. He's going to have to get legislation through Congress, just like Obama had to get Obamacare through Congress. He couldn't just do a healthcare executive order. Obviously, there will be some areas in which Joe Biden is going to overreach. He's going to do executive actions on gun control. I don't think he'll be able to ban so-called assault weapons via an executive order. He'll probably be able to do some minor things. But in terms of sweeping gun control legislation, the kind of the left wants, with universal background checks and national firearm registration and, banning, again, AR-15s and guns like that. He won't be able to do it. He just won't.
And it's one of the gun control is one of the single biggest losing issues for the Democratic Party and has been for some time. I wonder, I guess, he's going to want to pursue that policy, but is he going to want to waste political capital on it, like you were saying, Joe? I mean, he's going to have so little as it is coming in. Whether he gains those 2 seats in the Senate or not, that's a 50-50 split in the Senate, and obviously
Joe Manchin's a pro-gun
Democrat.
I mean, there's other Democrats
there are
like
pro-gun
that,
Democrats.
Yeah.
And we have a solidly conservative, relatively solid conservative Supreme Court
Exactly.
as
Yeah,
well
yeah.
at this point. So even if they do manage to get some legislation passed, it has
So
to
I'm not
pass
too
that
worried
hurdle.
about. Thankfully, I'm not too worried about what's going to happen with Biden on guns because I just don't. You hear from the same people every time. Elizabeth Warren and
Right.
all
The
those
usual
all those left
suspects.
people. But unless they have a majority in the Senate, and unless they have a majority in the Senate, there's just only so much that they can do, which is good. It's a good thing.
Well, that
Yeah,
is a good thing.
definitely.
That is what checks and balances are for.
Yeah.
absolutely.
So how about other types of security, Andrew?
Yeah, so I mean,
Security.
I think, luckily, or I guess unluckily, the one place where we're going to find bipartisanship in Congress is in protection of the surveillance state. We spoke a couple weeks ago, maybe it was just a week ago, about Edward Snowden, about Julian Assange, and about the Patriot Act, about how the government has abused Section 215 of the Patriot Act to collect metadata on phone calls. And we discussed last time a New York Times report that broke that there is a list of folks who have reached certain websites that just kind of is floating around in the government right now. And so what I wanted to talk about is, and if we can bring up the tweet, Tulsi Gabbard.
I wonder if westernjournal.com is on that list of websites.
I would assume so.
I would
wouldn't
not
be
surprise
surprised
me
at all.
if westernjournal.com were on that
I would
website.
assume so. I mean,
You are
unfortunately,
probably on a list for going to WJ, westernjournal.com, but it's a list you should be proud to be on.
absolutely. I mean, it's funny that you say that because, I mean, Andrew Breitbart was incredibly intelligent in saying, I want to say in maybe 2014, that, the left has constantly looked to make us out to be these kind of Timothy McVeigh figures on the right, depending on what we access on the internet. We're dangerous, right? So, they are putting probably a large number of Americans and a large number of foreign nationals on these surveillance lists. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, a Democrat from Hawaii, a representative in the House, and Thomas Massie from Kentucky, a Republican representative, they have come together on a bipartisan basis. We're going to show you the tweet right now, to forward legislation to repeal the Patriot Act and to make further amendments to FISA, to essentially enforce that the president would no longer, under their legislation, the president would no longer be able to use executive action to enforce surveillance collection on American citizens. There would be sweeping restriction on on whether or not you could even seek surveillance on a United States citizen legislatively or in the courts without an official warrant, which would be fantastic. And a lot of this discussion came about, nearly a decade ago, with Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, with WikiLeaks and with kind of the info dumping of, insider information. So kind of what I want to get at today is, first of all, on the topic of those figures, as we're seeing, the last of what might be the last of President Trump's political capital kind of going out the door if he is to step down and if Biden is to take control of the White House. We're seeing that there will probably be some pardons. That's when presidents kind of make those last hurrah pardons.
Right.
We may see that for Snowden and Assange. What I want to ask you guys is, are the figures, how should we be painting the figures who expose the abuses that we've seen of this surveillance state? Yeah. Should we call them heroes? Are they villains who have kind of exposed, national security concerns? I mean, what is it?
I think that they're flawed messengers, as with most people. When you try to paint people as purely a hero or purely a villain, you're just going to run into problems because there's more nuance in the argument than that. Julian Assange, as I said, I think it was last week, is not a particularly good person.
No.
Right? He's been involved in some questionable criminal proceedings. There's some allegations about him in Russia. I don't like him. I think he makes me feel a little uncomfortable as a person. That being said, you can separate the man, the not great man that he is, from the very important things that he has accomplished. In that in that sense, yes, he is a hero, but he's not a hero in, he's flawless and everything he has done is perfect. he's a flawed person, like everyone else. He has a lot of, I don't like him, but you have to say, look, we recognize what you've done is very important. Edward Snowden, a little bit easier to me. Edward Snowden also has some things I don't particularly love. There's nothing that I hate about him. But as with any person, they have character flaws. Edward Snowden has his character flaws. What he exposed was huge. It's hard to overstate the importance of him basically saying, look, the government is spying on you. It is doing this without warrants. And that's one of the biggest revelations of the past 100 years, honestly. And yeah, he has his flaws, but he's heroic for the message that he delivered.
Your point's really valid, Joe. And the examples that are often cited are people like George Washington, who was a great hero and owned slaves. Thomas Jefferson. Martin Luther King Jr. is another one who was obviously a civil rights hero and also an adulterer, apparently. So we get into trouble when we put people up on these pedestals, right?
Yes.
Because
which is why a reason not to put them on pedestals in the first place.
That's exactly right. It's
Put
a
the
reason
things
not to
they
put
did
them on
on
pedestals in the
pedestals.
first place.
Yeah.
I think in answer to your question, Andrew, the answer to what you actually asked, I think, is yes. They're both those things. They are. They bring some level of danger to the American people because of what they've done. I think that's fair. I think ending these surveillance programs means accepting the risk of a heightened level of danger of terrorist attacks or foreign conspiracy or whatever. And I still think they're heroic for exposing those things because I'm willing to accept that level of heightened danger. That the fact that the concept, the idea that I have to turn over all of this freedom to the government in exchange for safety has always been garbage, right? It's been garbage, one, because it's a bad trade, and two, because I don't get the safety. No matter what I give them in terms of freedom.
Security theater. Yeah,
exactly. They cannot keep me safe from anybody who wants to, really is dedicated to making that attack is going to find a way to do it. What the government can do, or a good bodyguard can do, any security guy will tell you, we can up the cost. We can make it harder for the hit to happen. We can't stop the hit. We can up the cost to the hitter.
Yes.
You can't stop the hit. And people who are in favor of this kind of surveillance state stuff are selling you a bill of goods. They're telling you, oh, no, we're keeping you safe through this. No, you're not. You might be. I would accept, actually, the premise that you're keeping us safer, but I would not accept the premise that the cost is worth what you're giving us.
George, I'm so glad that you brought that up because I think that false equivalency between security and freedom has been drawn time and time again.
Ben Franklin did it
exactly.
First, yeah.
Tulsi Gabbard. I'm so glad you point that out. Tulsi Gabbard quoted Ben Franklin, one of the founding fathers, in her tweet. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety.
Yeah.
So what I want to ask you guys is, do you think that this legislation is I have doubts that it will get through anywhere with, conservatives and liberals on both sides, those establishment figures willing to put it down with, absolutely reckless abandon. But what I want to ask you is this legislation the right direction? Should a full repeal happen? Should we kind of take a more measured approach and go with reform to these policies? What do we do?
Yeah. You repeal it and you make sure people understand what it means because, as George said, you are going to give up some security when you want liberty, and that is American. We don't ask the government to protect us from every little thing that could hurt us because we are a nation of people who have to take ownership of their own lives, basically. And you tell people, you make sure people understand this, look, this is what happens, and then you get rid of it. You get rid of Patriot Act, and you never talk about it again, hopefully, except if you're, holding the government and everyone else accountable for all the abuses that were perpetrated under that. But yes, it's a step in the right direction. It won't happen because one of the most bipartisan things people can agree on is to keep spying on Americans for safety and national security and the military-industrial complex and all of that stuff. But yeah, get rid of it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, ditto. I would totally scrap it. There are probably elements of it that are useful.
Of course.
And that's fine. We can, you scrap it and then revisit those elements. And certainly that is, that's the way it's supposed to work. What happened with the Patriot Act, just as happens with almost all legislation, is the thing gets written and then everybody has their say and pieces get added to it and lobbyists come in. And those lobbyists are not only working for the private sector. You have lobbyists for the CIA coming in and saying, no, we also need to add this. And they're not, I should say lobbyists with air quotes, right? Because they're probably not being, exactly.
Consulting and lobbying
not
are
the same
two specific grifts. Yeah.
They are.
Our least favorite.
They are. And many of those consultants are actually employed by the CIA. I don't mean necessarily the CIA is going out to K Street and hiring a firm, although they might be. There are internal people pushing those interests as well.
People have interest in
within
keeping
the
the status quo.
And so you wind up with this behemoth legislation that nobody really knows front to back.
No.
I mean, literally nobody knows it front to back.
Even just looking at the repeal that Massey and Tulsi Gabbard put forward, I was confused, and I would like to think that I'm pretty well read on this topic. There are so many points and nuances to what's been written. It's another one of those Obamacare situations where it was passed quickly, passed without a full read, and now everybody's figuring out what's in it over the course of years.
And the people of the United States of America cannot hold their elected officials, much less the unelected bureaucrats of this country, accountable if they can't understand what the legislation empowers these folks to do. And I honestly believe that much of this legislation is overly complicated for that very reason.
Because they don't want people to understand it.
That's right.
Yeah.
It discourages people from getting involved and holding elected and unelected officials
But it gives
accountable.
them, it says, you can get the warm and fuzzy feeling of knowing you're safe, and in return, the people, the elites, the people who know better, the people who know about national security,
we'll take
and
care of you.
Counterterrorism and all that stuff. We'll take care of you. You just worry about, you know you're safe, and we got you.
But George,
And it's a
who
lie.
helps the American people understand these types of things?
What an excellent question, Andrew J. Shasha. I only call him Andrew J. Shasha on WJ Live because when they put the lower third under to tell him, to tell us that that's who he is, it's Andrew J. Shasha. Like everyone else, I call him Andy. We all call him Andy around here. He loves that. So yeah, who will help you understand what's going on in government? Look, there's nobody who can explain it all because it's insane. You can't. There's a great scene in a Tom Clancy novel where they bring out, I don't remember which novel it is, but they bring out the U.S. tax code and they put it on a table, and the table collapses under the weight of the paper. And that's just the tax code. And yes, it's a work of fiction, but it's a pretty believable work of fiction, at least that scene. There is nobody who's going to explain it top to bottom, but what the Western Journal will help you understand, I hope, our mission is to help you understand the way things should be. We do understand the Constitution of the United States, which is what is supposed to govern all of this mess, and which is largely ignored by the powers that be most of the time. When we have a question about the Constitution that we don't understand, we go outside the Western Journal to people who are subject matter experts, and we get those answers so that we can give you the truth. The mission of, the mission of the Western Journal is to equip our readers with the truth. The mission of WJ Live is to equip our listeners with the truth, our viewers with the truth, and that we want to do that every single day. As best as we possibly can. Will we mess it up? We certainly will. We are flawed people. To Joe's point earlier, we're all flawed people. We don't always understand the truth even when we think we do. But we're going to do our very best to bring you the truth every day through the Western Journal at westernjournal.com and at WJ Live that you can find at youtube.com/WJ Live. We're here every weekday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Yeah, if you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell.
Ding!
Thank you, Joe. And
I thought we were supposed to do it at the end.
you were, if I'm remembering right, Joe, just before we sign out here, you were a pretty big fan of Tulsi Gabbard during the.
I was, yes.
Yeah,
I do like Tulsi Gabbard.
And you're still single, right?
I am still single. Yeah.
She's not.
She's not.
That's all I'm saying. That's
Not
all
a
I'm
home
saying. Look,
wrecker.
dude, I can
I'm
only
not a home
do.
wrecker, George.
I can only do what I can do. Okay, I can only do what I can do. I'm doing what I can for you. Anyway, thank you for joining us, WJ Live. Oh, quick programming note. We will be here today. What day is today? Today is Wednesday. We'll be here for the next 2 days, 5 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and then we will be going on a 2-week break for the holidays, for Christmas and New Year specifically. And we'll be back on January 4th, I believe that Monday is. So that makes it all the more important that you click that subscribe button and hit that bell.
Ding! I'm not doing it. Three times. Three times is
today.
too much.
I didn't start this. So that when those new episodes air, you don't miss them. You get a notification to let you know, yep, we're back. So we will be here the next 2 days, 5 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. And we'll hope to see you then, and then after the holidays on January 4th. Guys, thanks for joining me today. Our very special thanks to our guest, Chef Andrew, and we'll see you next time on WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. Stay safe, everybody.
The Western Journal has rolled out a brand new subscription model designed specifically for readers like you, who want the unvarnished truth that the establishment media won't tell you. Our multi-tiered plans give you exactly what you want and help us fight fake news during this, the most important election of our lives. Become a subscriber to the Western Journal today and unlock exclusive features you won't find anywhere else. It's easy. Just follow the prompts in this video